All right, hello and welcome everybody. This is a second take actually. I was planning on doing a review of First Lensman, the book today, but something came up in the news that actually kind of caught my attention, and I wanted to talk about it. So I was looking at the news, and I was looking at entertainment news to see if there's anything interesting going on in writing or entertainment in general, video games, whatever. And I saw a video that says that it's a short 12-second video of Nobuo Uematsu, who is the composer who did did all of the early Final Fantasy games up through. I'm pretty sure he did up through 7 or 8 at least, and like after that he was still kind of an advisor, I think. But he did all those. He did a bunch of Final Fantasy games. He did. What other cool stuff has Uematsu done? He has a band called the Black Mages, which is a lot of fun, kind of a rock band. He's done a lot of really cool soundtracks, game soundtracks that I've enjoyed. And he is one of the first people that actually got me to pay attention to music in a video game. I remember when I first played Final Fantasy IV, or as it was called when it came here, Final Fantasy II, on the Super Nintendo. I remember being completely enthralled by the music and being like, wow, this is total step up from anything I've ever heard in a game before. Moods and instruments and sound fonts and all that good stuff was happening in Final Fantasy IV. And then later on, when Final Fantasy VI, aka Final Fantasy III, came out here in the US, I think that was probably the first time I actually ever noticed him in the credits, right? I think I know I beat Final Fantasy II a bunch of times, but I feel like I never actually noticed his name in the credits. But when I beat Final Fantasy VI, 3, definitely it was like, ooh, Uematsu. I need to find out what else he's done and, follow him. And he's one of the people that really got me into video game music as a kid. And, I still am. I've got my Final Fantasy VI original soundtrack. This one's real. This one's legit. I imported it. This one I got at some little store, Final Fantasy IV original soundtrack. This one I'm pretty sure this one's a bootleg, but it still plays just fine. I've had bootlegs that don't play fine, so that's not nothing. But I put them both on my computer, and they've been on my computer ever since I got the discs. And just that old Super Nintendo MIDI always really got me good. But even after that, Uematsu's work in Final Fantasy VII, the soundtrack in 7 is great. I'm not a huge fan of the game myself, but it's a fantastic soundtrack. And then, it wasn't just him, it was people like Michiko Naruke, who did the first 3 Wild Arms games. There's Yasunori Mitsuda, who did Chrono Trigger. There was Koichi Sugiyama, who did the Dragon Quest games. They all, encouraged me to become a big fan of video game music, and I still listen to a lot of it to this day. Man, it's I still have my original cartridge and stuff for this, for this, because, these games, the thing about these older games is they didn't have a whole lot of sound effects or voice acting or whatever, right? Purely for space reasons, and budget reasons. But what it did is it made the music really kind of front and center in the game. The first 2 Wild Arms don't have any voice acting. Final Fantasy didn't have any voice acting up until 10. And so the music was you really had to rely on the music to set the atmosphere, to set the scene for any given setting. And so, when I played through Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, I was really impressed by the amount of variation in the soundtrack by Uematsu, by the different moods, how appropriate each song was for the area that you played it in, kind of how it really built up the atmosphere and made the game really jump out at you as something really incredible. And so apparently he has announced, and I watched the Twitter video for it's 12 seconds, and I watched it 4 or 5 times to make sure that all the words in the subtitles were matching the words that he was actually saying. And I'm not going to try to reproduce his phrasing of it, but basically he said that this game, FANTASIAN Neo Dimension, which I got nothing. I have no idea what this game is. But he said, it's going to be his Saigo no Sakuhin, his last. He didn't say Saigo no Sakuhin. There's a more complicated phrasing for it, but for what he said. But basically, the gist of it is that this is going to be his last Saigo no his Sakuhin, like work as a video game composer in general. And that's kind of the end of an era. Honestly, he's been doing this since the mid '80s. He did the score for the first Final Fantasy on NES, right? So 80. What was that, 87, 88, 89, something like that? So he's been doing this for like about 40 years now, possibly more than 40 years-ish, either a little bit more or a little bit less. I don't feel like doing math tonight. But, he was one of the composers who really brought me into, holy crap, video game music can actually do something really interesting. And, there were certainly video game music that I appreciated before Final Fantasy II and Final Fantasy III, or Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI. The Mega Man soundtracks for the NES are typically have some amazing tracks. But, the first time I started listening to video game music outside of actually playing the games themselves was Uematsu stuff. And, I started importing CDs when the Wild Arms soundtrack came out. I love that game's soundtrack, and the second one too are both amazing. And Michiko Naruke made those. We've got Yasunori Mitsuda who did Chrono Trigger. We've got Sugiyama Koichi, and I have a few of each of their CDs from a few of the different games. And I have a bunch of other video game soundtrack CDs as well. Many real ones and a decent number of bootlegs too. Because back in the day, you could not get that stuff in the U.S. and importing it was cheaper than you'd think, but still really expensive for a high school kid. So you would go to somewhere where they had some crappy bootleg from somewhere, and you'd be like, okay, it's $10, I'll pick it up. And you pray to goodness that it friggin' works. But I'm going to have to check out this game because, he said it's going to be his last game composition, his last time working as a full composer for a game. I don't know whether the game's going to be good or not because Square Enix has been throwing a lot of foul balls lately, but who knows? Maybe it's going to be really good, and maybe the music in it will be really amazing as well. I mean, it's probably going to be. It's Uematsu stuff. I just wanted to say that one other thing is that while he said he's going to be retiring from doing game music development full time, what I hope will still happen is that number one, he'll still get take some time to play with the Black Mages, his band, which he seems to really enjoy, doing rock arrangements of stuff and playing that. I hope he'll continue to do that. And what I really hope will happen is that instead of really working his guts out for thing after thing after thing after thing, I hope what will happen is that he'll find some people that show him some really cool things that he wants to be a part of, and that he'll get brought out of retirement, that he'll bring himself out of retirement for that. Or at least as an advisor, because man, it would be painful not to ever get an Uematsu thing again. But I suspect he'll find a few passion projects here and there. So hopefully that'll be good. And this has happened before. There's a series that I also really like called Sakura Wars. It's on the Sega Saturn and on the Dreamcast. And there's a character in that game series named Sumire. And she said that she was going to be done voice acting in video games entirely for good. And they even went so far as to make I think it's a half-hour video animation to set for a send-off for her character, because she was such an iconic voice in that series. And what ended up happening is that years and years and years later, the Sega created the new Shin Sakura Wars, new Sakura Wars for PS4, and she actually came back for that. So it's one of those things where, hopefully Uematsu has retired, but we'll still probably be hearing from him, I hope. So that's my thing for today. Look for a review of First Lensman tomorrow. That'll be a short and sweet one, I think. It's a decent book. Nothing too amazing jumping out, and nothing too bad jumping out either. So it'll be a short review. But man, this thing was my stuff back in the day. And it was the first time I ever wanted to just turn on video game music outside of playing the game, maybe not the first time, but close to the first time. And yeah, to hear that Uematsu is retiring is like, wow, that's another great, because like you know, a lot of these people are still working today. Surprisingly, you know, they have had long and illustrious careers, and Uematsu is one of the amazing ones who's had one of the most illustrious careers, writing music for, you know, one of the most famous, you know, JRPG series ever produced, and more. And I hope that we still get to hear from him, you know, from here on out, and he doesn't just like go fishing for the rest of his days. But I suspect we'll see him again with some cool projects. So that'd be hope. I'm hoping for that at least. So yeah, in the description I'll have the video that I saw, so that you can go take a look at it. It is subtitled. The subtitles appear to be accurate, so it's quite a shocker. But yeah, definitely would definitely gonna listen to some Uematsu tonight in his honor. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Old video games is one of my passions. I do love, you know, the old retro. People call it retro, but like, man, it's the stuff I grew up on. So like, it doesn't feel retro to me. And I'll probably have posts about this occasionally. But like, this is a big one because it's artistic. It's Uematsu, one of the premier video game music composers, you know, saying I'm out, I'm too old. And he doesn't look, I mean, he doesn't look and sound old. He looks and sounds really young, but he's been in the business for 40 years. So, you know, I guess he is getting up there. But again, I hope we'll hear more from him in the future. I'll have to check out that game because who knows, maybe it's something really good, or maybe just the soundtrack's good. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like what I'm doing, if you got to this part of the video and you want to help the channel out, you know what to do. And yeah, tomorrow I will have a nice little book review for you of some retro, like pulpy retro sci-fi. So yeah, see you later.